Hello everyone! I know I said I was just gonna do a quick little book review today, but then I watched The Thief of Bagdad and I was like, oh, I gotta talk about this too. So today's video will cover a book and a movie. The book is William Cameron Menzies' The Shape of Films to Come, written by James Curtis and published in 2015. It is a biography of old Hollywood director, producer, and production designer William Cameron Menzies, a name you may or may not be familiar with, but I can guarantee that you've seen his work or seen the work of others who were influenced by him. The list of films he worked on as art director, production designer, director is astonishing. In some instances, he designed the whole thing before filming began. In others, he came in midway to assist with a particularly difficult sequence. Some of the biggest titles he worked on in a significant capacity include The Thief of Bagdad, Bulldog Drummond, Things to Come, Gone with the Wind, Foreign Correspondent, Our Town, King's Row, The Pride of the Yankees, For Whom the Bell Tolls, It's a Wonderful Life, Invaders from Mars, and Around the World in 80 Days. A good friend gave me this book a while back. I started reading it at the end of the year, took a 3-month break for that Snowbound project, and then picked it up again and finished it. It's an interesting read, and I enjoyed it. It conveys a wealth of information without getting bogged down by minutia, and I like that Curtis didn't spend pages and pages summarizing movies and detailing plots scene by scene. He limited himself to what you needed to know, and I appreciated that because I would like to watch some of these movies and not know everything about the story. It looks hefty, but it's not really. Coverage of Menzies' career is comprehensive, but there are also a lot of photos, film stills, sketches, artwork, plus there's a good chunk of back matter. The book ends at page 341, and then there are 70 pages, I think, of notes, appendices, and an index. I will say that as a personal biography, it doesn't really cut the mustard. It's sufficient, but if you are curious about Menzies the man, you'll probably be disappointed. There just wasn't a lot of information out there. Curtis draws heavily from Menzies' personal correspondence and quotations from people who worked with him and his daughter Suzanne's recollections, but that can only go so far. He faced an uphill battle with this subject because there just wasn't a whole lot to work with. Menzies was not someone who was high profile and chronicled a lot during his lifetime, and even though he's kind of come into his own now after his death, in more recent years appreciation for him and his work has grown, there still isn't a lot of biographical information out there. Curtis is trying to fill that gap, but he has enough for him to draw a picture, but not enough to fill in a lot of details. At times, the biographical angle even seemed like an aside. At one point, Curtis suddenly throws it out there that Menzies' ability to work was beginning to suffer from his drinking problem. And I was like, what? What drinking problem? How come you didn't mention that before? That's kind of a big deal. So there were some oddities when it came time for him to drop in something, fill you in on a detail that, oh yeah, this has been going on in his personal life. The main focus is on Menzies' professional career, and there it is very informative, even enlightening. If the book has a thesis, it's that William Cameron Menzies never got as much credit and recognition as he deserved. Far too often, what he accomplished was attributed to the director or the cinematographer. And what's kind of crazy is that sometimes Menzies himself refused credit when it was offered. Curtis posits that one of the reasons why Menzies was overlooked was because nobody knew how to classify what he did. He won the very first Academy Award for art direction, but he was heavily involved with set design, effects, lighting, photography, the entire filmmaking process, really. And from that role of art director, he created a new role of production designer, which was a lot more, it was more all-encompassing. But first and foremost, he was an artist, and his gift was an ability to envision an entire film from start to finish, shot by shot. Storyboards are more or less commonplace now. A lot of people know that Hitchcock was really big into making storyboards and having the whole film planned out ahead of time so that the actual filming was easy. But back in the early days of movies, Menzies was the first one to sketch out an entire motion picture in the beginning stages, even before a script was complete, and make paintings so detailed that sometimes all the director had to do was show up, tell the actors where to stand, and roll film. Menzies specialized in contrasts and composition. He was a master of evocative imagery with a knack for visual storytelling. His approach to setting up a shot was surprisingly shrewd and economical, but he created the illusion of lavishness and grandeur. The book's opening chapter is an exciting one, recounting the night they filmed the burning of Atlanta for Gone with the Wind, a sequence that Menzies oversaw himself. One of the most surprising things I learned here is that Menzies is the one responsible for the way Gone with the Wind looks. It's thanks to him that the film, which had 3 different directors and 1 imperious producer, is a stunning and cohesive masterpiece rather than a visual hodgepodge. I've often wondered who to praise when gushing over how the movie looks. Which of the 3 directors was responsible for the bulk of it? Or was it the cinematographer? Or was it David O. Selznick? But the answer, according to Curtis's book and all the people he quotes who were involved, the man responsible was William Cameron Menzies. The book doesn't go into great detail about the making of every film Menzies was involved with, but it has a lot to say about the making of certain films and the progression of particular working relationships he had. It covers the many ups and downs of his career and its untimely end, areas where Menzies had shortcomings, like his total lack of desire to talk to actors, and areas where he excelled. All of this was informative and made me want to watch a bunch of movies I hadn't seen or revisit ones I had. I had just one major disappointment. Last October, I watched 1953's The Maze, which Menzies directed. It was one of his last films. I really liked it, and I especially liked the look of it, the atmosphere, the contrasts of light and dark. So I was looking forward to hearing some behind-the-scenes information. Well, imagine my chagrin when I got to that part, and Curtis spent just 2 paragraphs on The Maze, and they were 2 dismissive paragraphs at that. I know The Maze isn't highbrow entertainment. It has the unfortunate 3D gimmick, it has a silly reveal and a couple ridiculous scenes, and I'm sure a lot of people write it off. But I thought it was great in its own special way. I had a really fun time watching it, and I've thought about it several times since. So I was kind of put off by this curt disposal of the movie. Overall, though, I learned so much here. My biggest takeaway is that I should be more careful when I praise the look of a film, lest I rob someone of credit by just assuming that the director is the one who made all the right decisions. It is bound to happen from time to time, unfortunately, but I'd like to be guilty of it a bit less. Because I have read this book, I now feel like, okay, let's reevaluate everything we've ever known about who calls the shots and what makes a film look the way it does. It has really kind of opened my eyes to that area of filmmaking, which, frankly, I was pretty ignorant of before. Now, I don't feel like I know everything about it now. This is just one book about one man, but I'm at least a little bit less ignorant than I was before. It's a really good book about the dawn of filmmaking, the transition from the silent era to the sound era, and the evolution of the creative process, and the tremendous extent to which Menzies' bold, innovative visions influenced what movies looked like then and now, and how they were made. I came away with a list of movies to see now that I can appreciate them more, and before I even finished the book, I got started with the film that was the first major turning point for Menzies, and one of his biggest successes, the one that helped establish his style, 1924's The Thief of Bagdad, the Arabian Nights fantasy extravaganza directed by Raoul Walsh and starring acrobatic silent film megastar and producer Douglas Fairbanks as the rascally, roguish thief who experiences a change of heart and goes on a quest to win the princess's hand. I thought this movie was awesome. I watched the Coen restoration, and it looks fabulous. Possibly one of the best silent movies I've ever seen. I came to it primarily interested in the design, of course, and that is marvelous. Huge sets, beautiful architecture, complex multi-level facades for the thief to climb all over. Everything is so cool to look at. Arches, window shapes, staircases, balconies, props, and everything is so functional. And then there are the furnishings and the beds and the funny hats and the funny shoes. It's a prime example of just how grand and sumptuous a film from the 1920s could be. Naturally, Menzies' designs incorporated Middle Eastern style, but he was also heavily influenced by German Expressionism, which is evident in his use of vast spaces, high ceilings, and peculiar angles, and his intentional use of shadows and light. As for the rest of the movie, while I didn't care for Fairbanks' character at first, with his broad gestures and cocky demeanor, which is not unlike other Fairbanks characters, there's a point where he becomes the hero, the guy you want to root for, and I give Fairbanks props for making the change of heart feel so genuine. Plus, it's Fairbanks. He's a legend, and it's fun to watch him leap all over the place with boundless energy and irrepressible charm. And the rest of the cast is enjoyable. Julianne Johnston makes a charming princess, Anna May Wong plays a duplicitous slave girl, and Sojin Kamiyama is featured as the sinister Mongol prince who has designs of capturing Baghdad one way or another. Obviously, this movie wasn't politically correct. And the Persian prince, I found out afterward, was actually played by a woman. Another big plus with this restoration was the score, which was composed/arranged by Carl Davis. Now, I love Davis's score for the restoration of the 1925 version of The Phantom of the Opera, so seeing his name attached was a good sign to begin with. But he built the score around the music of Rimsky-Korsakov, specifically Scheherazade. Scheherazade is one of my favorite compositions. I could just go on about how much I love that piece of music, and it is all over this thing. I just love what Davis did with it. The original piece is about 42 minutes long, and the film is 2.5 hours long. Not that it feels like it. It moves at a really good clip. So there is some finagling, some edits, some repeats, and there's some other music added as well. It is not 100% Scheherazade, but every single motif that was added in, the cue, oh my goodness, it was just like, it works so well. Now, the movie would have been an impressive spectacle without it, but having this music took it to another level. It made the movie for me. The Thief of Bagdad will turn 100 years old next year, but it's fresh and exciting. It's got humor, adventure, romance. There are scenes they put a lot of thought, time, and labor into for just a couple minutes of screen time, and there are effects that astounded audience at its original release that are still breathtaking. It's truly an awesome, enthralling work of art. I considered waiting until what else I saw in April to discuss this movie, but then I saw it, and it was just such a perfect example of Menzies' style. that it made sense to include it as a case study. I recommend the book to anyone who wants to know more about William Cameron Menzies as an unsung hero of Hollywood's golden age, or anyone who wants to know about production design and its germination, or about old Hollywood filmmaking in general. And I highly recommend The Thief of Bagdad. I was never really interested in watching it before, but I am so glad that I did. As a side note, but a very meaningful one, I wanted to thank all of you who expressed well wishes for my dad. His recovery from surgery is coming along slowly but surely. He ended up watching a good chunk of The Thief of Bagdad, and when it was all over, magic carpet ride and all, he said, "What on earth did people think of this when it first came out?" Considering how I felt watching it in 2023, I can only imagine how minds were blown in 1924. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you all think in the comments below, and I'll be back next week with another review. Thanks for watching.